today's video, I open and test out these 5 Bimoji Brushpens that I got on Amazon. It's the best deal I've found for them in a very long time. They're strangely hard to find, and I used to buy them at Michael's. I've gotten very low on the brush pen, and I've been trying to buy them for a few years now. I checked again recently and found them for quite a good deal, even though they're still not cheap per pen, at around $4.50 per pen once you include the tax. But for the set of 5, it was cheaper than the individual price per pen. On very smooth paper, so as not to damage the tips of these pens, I'm doing a little swatch test, testing out each different nib. They look extremely identical once you remove them from the package, which is color-coded and entirely in Japanese, as these are Japanese import pens and not originally intended for the English market. By looking at the tip, even sometimes gazing through the clear plastic, you can realize which pen you have, because there's no writing I can really decipher on it to tell me which one's which. The other option would be to mark the barrel in some way, but I would find that annoying, and I've had tape I've put on barrels before peel off or get in the way of my hand, so I decided not to do that in this case. They're extremely comfortable to grip, lightweight, they have the highest quality water and alcohol proof ink that is absolutely the deepest matte black ink you'll see, and they are incredible to use. The long brush tip is my absolute favorite, but I bought this set to get one of each and to try the other ones out. So far, I've been loving absolutely every single one of them, but for different reasons. Here, I'm continuing to test all the different pens out and noticing the differences between them. Later, I come back and start using them on very smooth paper that I put together in a little book a while ago. This is some of the May paper, the really good paper that's plasticky on one side and smooth, papery texture on the other. I'd already penciled in a bunch of different weapons that I need for my Great Tree book, and I decided that I'm going to do them all with the Bimoji Brushpens. I'm using some of these rulers and geometric guides to help, and in general freehanding the rest. I'm making sure to use the different pens based on the style of a particular thing I'm inking in, as well as the size of the line I'm doing. I'm using the very fine tip one a lot, and I find they're excellent. I'd only ever gotten the long, flexible brush tip version before, and it was one of my favorite pens I ever had. But this set was a really good deal, and it had one of each. All of them are absolutely fantastic, but I'm finding the really fine tip one is now one of my favorite pens as well, because of the way it feels on the paper. It's a little tiny bit flexible, but it's mostly more stiff, and it does extremely fine point lines really well, but there's a little bit of line variation that you can do. I'm trying out the different ones here and switching between the pens as needed. As you can see, I'm also rotating the paper for what's better for my wrist as I ink, which I really do recommend you do. Even though I was filming it, I decided to keep the paper turns in, well, for the sake of my wrist and the quality of the lines, as well as because I think too often YouTubers keep filming things so that they're taped down for the sake of filming, but this is actually not what you should necessarily be doing for the sake of the quality of the work and for your wrist. If you turn the page or the surface you're working on so that it's more ideal for the movement of your wrist and hand, you'll get better results and you won't injure yourself as easily as you would if you kept the paper stiff and in a position that is less natural for the movement of your hand and wrist. As you can see, I'm using a piece of tracing paper under my hand to prevent getting skin oils all over the page, and as well to prevent smudging or dirt transfer from my arm and my hand onto the other page. It's really good to have one of these little safety papers under your hand most of the time when you're working. Sometimes I get lazy and forget, but when I'm concerned about it, I do try to get something like that. You can also just use a scrap piece of paper or a piece of plastic for such a purpose as well. I'm trying to get all the different weapons. When I decided to do the illustration for the harpoon, I looked up a bunch of different historical harpoons, and I put a different variety of the different tips just to show the option there, so that it wouldn't be just the one version. I'm going to have to scan all these still for the computer. I don't think I've actually scanned them yet, but I need to scan them. I made sure to let the ink set into the paper for a long time before coming back to do any erasing of the pencil lines underneath. And I really do advise, if you wait at least 8 hours, you can make sure that the lines really have set into the page and it won't fade or lift up any of the ink. In this section, I test out how how alcohol proof or waterproof it is. I already knew it is, but how fast? The only way you can get any bleeding with a Copic marker is if you go within 5 seconds. I find even 8 seconds later, it doesn't bleed. When it comes to watercolor, even when you go as immediately as possible, there doesn't seem to be any bleeding at all. If you simply wait 10 seconds, it's fine to go in with alcohol markers, so they're great for working extremely quickly with in mixed media. And I'm going to ink using various Bimoji Brushpen my Yggdrasil Sphinx. This is a creature monster stat block which will be featured in my Great Tree book, and I had an original one I did. I've actually done several versions, digital and traditional, but I decided to do a version wearing jewelry to emphasize the intelligence of this creature, which is a fully sentient being. I intentionally mixed in humanoid features, human features, in with cat, with parrot wings. I used the idea of a jaguar and a parrot as the basis for this particular sphinx, rather than the standard lion and eagle elements that so many animal hybrids seem to have. I also decided to use Mesoamerican inspired jewelry. Aztec, Mayan, and other South American cultures were my inspirations for the jewelry here. As you can see, I don't really have to worry much about smudging, and I can work extremely quickly. I'm also working on a very smooth paper, which I think is ideal for these type of pens. I find them to be the most enjoyable ink pens of all, but like I said, they are much more ideal on very smooth papers, so they're not actually suited to every single paper you could use without risking damaging the tips on them. You can still use them on rougher paper, but I do recommend mostly that you try to use them on the smoothest of papers. I'm using larger brushes, and I'm switching to the middle sizes with the slightly firmer pens to do some of the thicker lines and to fill in some of the solid spotting. Some papers I would recommend are the Coordination Smooth cardstock, which is available at Walmart, Strathmore and other brands of smooth Bristol, any marker paper, and other very smooth papers that are ideal for ink. I also recommend people trying things like toned or colored papers. As long as they're very smooth, they'll be ideal for this, including things like craft paper. There was a bit of a delay after I finished filming this video before I actually finished doing the voiceover, where I continue to use these pens. So I have more opinions after this initial test to determine the quality of these pens. Although I've been using the brush one, the flexible long brush, for many years, and it's definitely one of my favorite pens of all time. They all make it on the list, basically. They're all absolutely amazing pens, and the ink is some of my favorite ink. It's extremely matte and extremely black. It's alcohol and waterproof. I do advise you really try to keep it off your hands though, because it is really difficult to get off your hands if you get it on your hands, and to go wash it off with basically a rough scrubby brush or cloth of some variety. Just wash it really fast. It's very difficult to get off your hands when you get it on, but it is incredibly to use for art. I recommend bringing them with you for traveling because they dry incredibly quick. They're great with mixed media and they're so nice to use. You'd have to bring a sketchbook made of smooth paper, but you can also make custom sketchbooks with smooth paper or bring loose papers held together in some kind of collection. As you can see, I'm using the paper underneath my hand to protect the surface of the paper from my skin oils, as well as to make sure I'm not getting any dirt that might be on my hands there. I took a little break and then came back a bit later to add in all the spots. I did not pencil in anything but a few of the specific spots I really wanted to get a certain way, and I'm just freehanding these in by looking at my old version of the inking, because I knew I could do that with just some of the middle brushes, the less flexible but larger tipped ones that are good for filling in large areas very rapidly, as well as putting small dots on, and they work excellently for this. I think this set might be my favorite set of 5 pens I've ever gotten, and I highly, highly recommend them. Once again, that's all for this video. If you like my videos, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell to all notifications so you will know when a new video comes up. I aim for new videos every Wednesday, but sometimes life happens and things are delayed. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you with another one very soon.